Jay Widener here, reality check. Thanks for watching. Tell your friends, your family, and I hope you're not getting too bored with my reading of A Monument to the End of Time, or as we call it, Amet, which means truth, by the way, in Egyptian. That was our acronym for it back in the days when we were writing it. Right, this one's a loaded chapter, so get ready for some serious history of alchemy. This is section 2, Alchemical Pope and the Creation of the Millennium. As the Fatimid influence spread in the 10th and 11th centuries, some of the knowledge began to reach Europe through the schools of Muslim Spain, where science and civilization had reached a level that was almost unimaginable by European standards. The best minds of Europe traveled to Spain to study everything from music to medicine to astronomy. One such student, Gerbert of Aurillac, the future Pope Sylvester II, shines out of the murk of the Dark Ages. It was Gerbert's effort that almost single-handedly pulled the Christian West out of its Dark Age stupor, that is. Gerbert's life is an example of how a poor intellectual prodigy could rise to the very top of early medieval society. He was born around 940 in Auvergne, France, and at an early age entered the nearby monastery at Aurillac. At the abbot's insistence, Gerbert was sent to Spain to study mathematics. Spain at this time, the mid-1960s, was at the peak of its civilization. The Caliph Hakan II, son of the triumphant Abd el-Rahman, who forged Muslim Spain into a world power, surpassed every one of his predecessors in the love of literature and the sciences, we are told by Muslim historian al-Makki. He turned all Andalus Muslim Spain into a market where the wisdom and learning of the whole ancient and medieval world could be found. It was in this environment that the young prodigy, Gerbert of Aurillac, found himself submerged. He must have done very well indeed, because we find Count Borel of Barcelona introducing him to the Pope in 970, Pope John the 13th. One of the popes of the period, who seemed sincere and managed to die of old age instead of assassination, was so impressed by Gerbert's erudition that he recommended him to the up-and-coming world political power, Otto I, Emperor of the Roman West and the Charlemagne of Germany. After 70 years of internal discord, Otto I, a true scion of Charlemagne in looks and temperament, became the King of Germany. At his coronation, Otto surrounded himself with the nobility of the neighboring countries, creating at the very beginning of his reign a sense of transnational importance. No wonder he soon began to see himself as the restorer of the Western Empire. In the first 15 years of his age, Otto strove by any means possible, from war to murder to marriage, to accomplish this goal. In 962, Pope John XII crowned Otto as the Holy Roman Emperor of the West. Within a year of him becoming emperor, Otto had marched into Italy and made it part of the new Holy Roman Empire, which was, of course, a mere appendage of the German crown. This was the new world power to whom the young and scholarly Gerbert was introduced in 970. For the next 33 years, Gerbert would be the spiritual advisor and mentor to all three Ottos, Otto I, his son, and grandson. His vast learning and command of all three diplomatic languages of his day, Latin, which he wrote with an elegance not seen since Sidonius in the 5th century, Greek, and Arabic, made him invaluable in the diplomatic intrigues of the new imperial court. From the mid-970s to his death in 1003, Gerbert would remain at the center of the changes sweeping through the West. During the year, he served as tutor to the young Otto II. Gerbert also helped Otto I arrange a marriage between the Greek emperor's daughter, Theophano, and his student. This would make their son, the future Otto III, the era of both halves of the Roman Empire, old Roman Empire. Hard on the heels of the successful conclusion of the marriage negotiations and its wedding, Gerbert was dispatched at his own request to Reims, the ancient and royal cathedral town of Charlemagne, where every king of France from Clovis I to the 5th century, in the 5th century, to Louis the 16th in the 18th century was crowned. Soon after his arrival, he was appointed head of the cathedral school by Otto II in appreciation for his diplomatic efforts. He held this post for a decade, and during that time, he collected manuscripts from all around the world, wrote works on the astrolabe, Arab astronomy, and geometry. Gerbert left his post as master of the cathedral school at Reims in 982. During the period, we find him writing letters to various other cathedral schools, promoting the development of libraries and encouraging the addition of Greek and the mathematics to the curriculum. Gerbert's opportunity to return to power politics arrived in 987 with the death of the last Carolingian king of France, Louis V. The unhappy Louis left no heirs, so the choice was between Charles of Lorraine, Louis' brother, and a distant offshoot of the Carolingian line, and the best candidate from the previous dynasty, the Merovingians. During the obscure Dark Age dynasty, this obscure Dark Age dynasty was made famous by the speculations in the book Holy Blood, Holy Grail by Bajent, Lee, and Lincoln, that it was in fact founded by the descendants of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. There is enough evidence in support of this contention to make us wonder just how their contemporaries saw them. Medieval tradition reports that the Merovingians had a supernatural origin. Gregory of Tours, the foremost hawkish, that's thunder, we're having a thunderstorm. Medieval tradition reports that the Merovingians had a supernatural origin. Gregory of Tours, the foremost Frankish historian, tells us that Merovee, the founder of the dynasty, was the son of two fathers. The first king of the Franks, Cholodio, was one father. The other was a strange sea creature similar to a quinotaur, according to Gregory of Tours, who impregnated his mother while she was out bathing in the ocean. From this, he was given the name Merovee, son of the sea. Merovee can also be translated as son of the mother and son of Mary. Strange titles for a barbarian and pagan king. His descendant, Clovis I, became ruler over a united Gaul, and eventually, after much prayer on the part of the hermit monk Saint Remy, was converted to Orthodox Christianity. This alliance helped stabilize the Western Church. For 250 years, the Merovingians ruled as a kind of priest-king, strangely above and exempt from the censure of the church it supported. The actual government was handled by their mayors of the palace. In the end, it was one of these mayors, Charlemagne's great-grandfather, Pepin the Short, who finished off the main line of the Merovingian dynasty. But other Merovingian lines had survived, most prominently that of Nestria, the Merovingian kingdom that included Reims and Paris. Descendants of the Merovingian kings had remained in control of the region as its dukes and even as the mayor of Paris. It was almost inevitable that when the Carolingian line died, that the kingship would revert to a descendant line of the Merovingians. Hang on. We could get a big thunderstorm here. This issue was decided by a church council called by the Archbishop Aldebaro of Reims and organized by Gerbert of Aurillac. Gerbert may, in fact, have done the research to prove Hugh Capet's claim to Merovingian ancestry. The council found that Hugh Capet's family was indeed descended of the last king of Neustria and therefore unanimously elected him the new king of France. next year, Archbishop Aldebaro died, and Gerbert rightly believed that he should be his successor as Archbishop of Reims. Hugh Capet, ever the politician, gave the archbishop's post to Arnulf, a bastard son of the Carolingian line. Hugh meant no insult, it was just politics. However, as politics, it backfired. Arnulf plotted against Hugh, and in 991, a French church council deposed him and put Gerbert in his place. For the next 4 years, Gerbert used his position as Archbishop of Reims to support the growth of the peace movement. He was also founded a variety of clerical orders known collectively as the chroniclers or the chronicling orders, and libraries in places far distant from Reims, including Provence, Aquitaine, Lorraine, and Calabria in northern Italy. During this time, however, the French church was fighting a fierce internal war with the current Pope, John XV, over the right to depose an archbishop. Excuse me. Faced with excommunication over the issue, Gerbert stepped down from the archbishop's post and moved from Reims to join the young Otto III's emerging court in Germany. In 996, Otto III reached the majority and took over the government with Gerbert of Aurillac by his side. When Pope Gregory V died suddenly in 999, it was inevitable that Gerbert would succeed him. Gerbert had the support of the emperor on the spot with his troops, as well as that of the abbot of Cluny, the leading force in both the reform movement and the peace of God movement. Gerbert saw this as the fulfillment of a long-held dream and fully supported the young protege in his imperial designs. He became Pope Sylvester II, taking the name of Constantine's Pope, Sylvester I, to emphasize the similarity between the two emperors. With the emperor's support, Gerbert, or Pope Sylvester II, as we will now call him, plunged into a whirlwind of far-reaching negotiations. He expanded the reach of the Catholic Church into Eastern Europe, adding the area of Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Hungary by creating archbishops and converting kings. Vajik, the Magyar king of Hungary, was baptized as King Stephen and eventually became a saint. From this, Sylvester sent him a holy crown to symbolize his Christian kingship. Hang on one second, I got to get something. I had to get a prop. All right. In addition to converting Eastern Europe, perhaps a bulwark against the press of Asiatic refugees, Jews, Khazars, Turks, and so on, being pushed westward out of Eastern Tibetan Mongolian okay, let me try. In addition to converting Eastern Europe, perhaps as a bulwark against the press of Asiatic refugees, Jews, Khazars, Turks, and so on, being pushed westward out ahead of the early Tibetan Mongolian invasions. Sylvester was also interested in converting Islam. With that in mind, he made a diplomatic contact with the Fatimid Caliph al-Hakim in the year 1000, which is in the Jewish calendar's year 1311 of the secular era 932, Huben, or years since the destruction of the temple, and 4,760 Anno Mundi, or years of the world since creation of the Muslim calendar. It is 391 years after the Hijra from Mecca to Medina. The early Fatimid caliphs became fabulously wealthy after conquering Egypt in the latter half of the 10th century. Al-Hakim ibn Aziz, who became caliph in 996, the same year Otto III became an emperor, inherited the wealth and power. In the end, it was along with other pressures, perhaps more than he could bear, he went mad, declared himself a god, and died, disappeared, or was assassinated sometime after 1021. But during his reign, far-reaching changes occurred. Al-Hakim supported the Al-Azhar Mosque and its growing university. He founded the Hall of Wisdom, hired Muhammad ibn al-Hatham, the probable inventor of the telescope, and helped Ali ibn Yunus publish his astronomical tables. Much as diplomacy, it was those subjects that Sylvester wanted to discuss. Al-Hakim, a 9th century Ismaili initiate, might just have something to share with the brilliant Pope. Sylvester arranged with the Fatimid Caliph in 1001 for a group of clerics and knights from the various chronicling orders to make an expedition to Syria and the Holy Land. Various historians have from time to time pointed to this as the first wave of crusades, and just as quickly remarked on their lack of aggressive zeal. Pope Sylvester's chroniclers, we are told in 12th century papal sermon by John XIV, disappeared without accomplishing anything except to serve as vassals of the Caliph, implying, of course, that they had converted to Islam. Al-Makari, the foremost Muslim historian of the 12th century, tells us that Al-Hakim greeted the Pope's entourage with honor and spent many weeks in Jerusalem discussing the virtues of Islam versus Christianity with them. He was so impressed by their sincerity that the Caliph gave them in September 1002 the use of a Byzantine Greek church on the outskirts of Jerusalem for their chapter house and library. Unfortunately, Al-Makari doesn't name the entourage of the location, doesn't name the entourage or the location of their order, merely that they were there as chroniclers or historians. By the time of the First Crusade, they were established in a Greek basilica on Mount Zion with the name, the Order of Our Lady of Mount Zion. They were hardly crusaders. The Muslim, they were hardly crusaders. The Muslim authorities do not record that they converted to Islam, but that Al-Hakim honored them as Christians. They came not to conquer Jerusalem, but to do research. We can only speculate on what. Hang on a second. Getting hot in here. All right. By the time his delegation established itself in Jerusalem, Sylvester himself had been forced out of Rome by the old problem of political terrorism. From northern Italy, Sylvester and Otto III struggled with a crumbling political situation. In 1003, they both, within a few months of the other, died under suspicious circumstances. The dream of a united Roman Empire as some kind of universal world state appeared to die with them. Thunderstorms, we got a lot of humidity here today. But in fact, it merely went underground for a few generations. To see this, we must look at Sylvester's legacy and his legend. Combining these perspectives allows us to glimpse the outlines of a far-reaching plan and even to note the shuffling of ideas and events behind the official explanations. Sylvester died before the plan began to bear fruit, but the harvest would eventually bring a Christian king of the Merovingian descent to the throne of Jerusalem. The most significant of Sylvester's legacies was the Peace of God movement, which would inspire both the First Crusade and the newly emerging popular heresies such as the Cathars and the Bogomils. Church councils and lay preachers spread the idea throughout the West in the century after Sylvester's death, preparing the way for the call to crusade. Both the Peasants' Crusade and its leader, Peter the Hermit, had their origins in the Peace of God movement. Peter the Hermit may in fact have been a direct connection with Sylvester's shadowy group of monks and chroniclers. One of these monks, Richard of the Order of Saint Remy, the saint who converted Clovis I to Christianity, had left us a portrait of Sylvester's teachings that contains the spark of the legend. Richard tells us, among the list of Gerbert's accomplishments, they had long studied the Hermetic arts. From the remark grew the legend of the alchemical Pope. The most persistent story, first told in the 13th centuries, has Gerbert, while still Archbishop of Reims, constructing a magical bronze head that foretells the future. The head, of course, announces that Gerbert will indeed be Pope, which, considering his shaky position as Archbishop, was a bold prediction. A similar story of a bronze head would be told about other medieval magicians, including Roger Bacon and Albertus Magnus. It also suggests that in an indirect way, the head, quote unquote, the Templars were supposed to have worshipped the mysterious Baphomet. These similarities are not accidents, but glimpses of the design behind the symbols. Richer, in his histories, gives us the clue. In the sentence after he mentions Gerbert's Hermetic accomplishments, Richard informs us that Gerbert had also designed an armillary sphere with which he could determine the location of the sun and the planets in relation to the celestial sphere. Interestingly enough, the Earth in this model was round 500 years before Columbus. I showed you guys the armillary sphere. This is the head. So that's the Earth inside. And then this is the ecliptic with the zodiac in it. And you can see it's tilted the right way. And this is the head that gives you predictions, because it's like astrology. Those similarities are not accidents, but glimpses of the design behind the symbol. Wait, I already said that. Later, as Pope, Sylvester designed and commissioned a new armillary sphere, a kind of small-scale planetarium, incorporating the information that Al-Ibn Yunus's tablets. The new sphere showed the plane of the ecliptic, the Milky Way, and the ecliptic and planetary poles. It was, in simple terms, a bronze machine for calculating the secret of time, alchemy's third and most important component. In symbolic terms, this became the head possessed by all famed students of the art in the Middle Ages. The mysterious name of the Templars' head, to briefly jump ahead of our story, confirms this assumption. Baphomet, phonetically in Arabic, Aramaic, and Hebrew, is simply Bet Amat, or place of truth. The root Ba or Bet is the same as the Ba in Baal. That's the god from the Phoenicians, and could signify a house, a place, or the action of filling space. The place of truth, used as a title, could well be meant to signify the space-filling house of the cube of space in the celestial sphere and the truth of its temporal indicators. Over time, the simple phrase became a code word for the secret itself. The Templars did not worship their bronze head. They meditated on it and studied it closely for clues about the secret of time and the timing of their alchemical processes. According to Sylvester's chronicling monk, Rudolphus Glaber started the pilgrimage movement with his financial account of the millennial activities surrounding the year 1033, the 1000th anniversary of Christ's death. While not completely true, we might call it propaganda today, Glaber's tale of cosmic portents and massive pilgrimages to Jerusalem gave voice to the anxieties of its age. A great desire arose in all classes of society to participate in the oncoming millennium, not just wait passively for its arrival. It was this feeling that initiated the First Crusade. Conquering Jerusalem brought the millennium one step closer. The tale of the Pope, the Emperor, and the Caliph remains hidden among the debris strewn by 1,000 years of secrecy and internal strife among the holders of various pieces of the secret. Pope Sylvester started a ball rolling that in a few hundred years would change beyond recognition the face of a European culture. The Crusades opened the cast directly to the face, to the West, and the hand of Sylvester's design played a part in all of it. Without Sylvester, there might never have been a crusade. And without Sylvester's Fatimid connections and his chroniclers in Jerusalem, there would certainly never have been an order of the Knights of the Temple. The Templars are the point where the deep politics started by the alchemical Pope surfaced into the historical record. The history of the Templars, particularly their mysterious origins and unaccounted for wealth, provide a myriad of suggestive connections. Without the Templars, there would have been no cathedral building movement or the money to pay for it. From the point of view of our research, without the Templars, there might not have been any such thing as alchemy to investigate. Okay, I know it's a whopper. I got one more whopper chapter to read, and then they'll get shorter. And I know a lot of you probably don't like history. Many people find history boring, but we have to do the chain all the way through. Then we wanted, for the first time, the history of alchemy in great detail to be explained. And so we took that path, and I know we took the risk of losing a lot of readers and listeners too by doing that, but we just felt that it had not been done and it needed to be put together. So Pope Sylvester was the Pope at the Millennium, and he set in motion all the things that happened that would lead up to the first alchemists appearing in Europe in the 12th century was when alchemy really started going. So this is an armillary sphere. This is the head that predicts the future. And you can see the signs of the zodiac are right here on this band, this bronze band. So bronze head, that's the Earth. That's the South Pole, that's the North Pole. You're looking up into the North Pole here. And so what you can do with the armillary sphere is find where you are in time. And so you can predict the future with where the stars or what signs will be when. And that's what they used to understand where they are in time. And like I said in a previous show, I believe things like cold fusion are determined by time. And that's why sometimes cold fusion experiments work and sometimes they don't work. And it's because the scientists are not aware that you have to know where you are in time. And as we get going through this book, maybe science will once again start taking time into account in the way that experiments are affected. All right, that's all I got for today. It was a whopper of a read. I'm Jay Widener. This is Reality Check. Thanks for watching. Hit like and subscribe. Tell your friends. And we'll be back with another reading. Thank you.